Hi guys, welcome back to another video and welcome to the spare room, aka the editing room, aka whatever you want to call it room. It's the everything room. I've been wanting to make this sort of video for a while now. I've just not been sure how to go about actually making it and if anyone will actually be interested. So if you do enjoy this video, please do click the like button or leave a comment down below so I know you like this type of video, and maybe I'll do another one in the future. If I don't get the likes and I don't get the comments, I know you guys don't like it and I won't do it again, I promise. But yeah, this is going to be quite a rambly video and this is going to go into a lot of geeky depths with the Freelander 2. So if you're not into that sort of thing, you're only interested in seeing a Freelander go up on 2 wheels, 3 wheels, that sort of thing, this video might not be for you, but we shall see. I've put together a series of clips and I'm going to talk through them. So yeah, this is going to be a bit rewindy, fast forwardy, that sort of thing. So without further ado, let's cut to the computer. And as you'll see, our lovely logo on display. First of all, we're going to start with, as long as this plays, I've made my mouse thing big so you can see it, so I can point out things on screen. Which axle does most of the driving? Before this clip plays, just going to pause it there. When we was at a live tuning, obviously I was fortunate enough to be in the dyno room and I wanted to film the cars mostly because that's the whole reason for the video. The geeky side of me wanted to film the computer, like the computer screen showing like the lines and stuff like that, but not really the lines. Bottom corner of it, there was 2 bars saying, I think front FA and RA or something like that. You'll see in a moment, but let me just play this on so we can see it. First 2 clips are really quick because I didn't want to pan away too much from the car. But yeah, as you can see, I'll let this play through a bit and then we'll talk through it. Right, as we'll see, I'll pause it there. This was one of the failed runs, or one of the runs where the car went into limp mode. Got a little snapshot of the screen on this one, and if you look down here, FA, RA, these are down the effort that the axles are putting in. Obviously the test has been set up to dyno the cars, and I know the rollers can be tweaked, added resistance, taken away resistance, that sort of thing. So they're not set up for this purpose, but it was quite interesting to see it up on screen, and I know a few other people will be quite interested in this. But as you can see, this car went under power, the front axle. What we're talking, if each one of these bars is 10%, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, potentially 75% is going to the front axle, 10, 20, about 25% to the rear axle. You can see the split between the 2 axles there, that most of the power is going to the front. I was actually reading a paper, well, like an article that someone posted up a while back about like Haldexes and different versions, and I think something like the Gen 3 Haldex can do a 90-10 split or something like that, so it can run front wheel drive 90%, rear wheel drive 10%, and then the Gen 4 can run 100% front axle and 0% rear axle if it requires. So I don't know if this is an indication, because this car's obviously got a Gen 3 because it's pre-2010. So therefore more power will go to the front as default. But yeah, as you can see in this scenario, the Haldex isn't locking up all that much and most of the effort is coming from the front axle. Very little coming from the rear axle. Obviously if it lost traction, that would then jump up, but obviously that's hard to simulate on a dyno. So I'll just let that clip run through and we'll go to the next clip. As you can see, it fluctuates a bit, and then as he comes off the power, it goes to a 50-50 split. I think it's the same car again on the dyno. As you can see, starts off 50%, and then the graph goes quite high up. I do slow down this video. I'll pause it there. As you can see, to start with, while it's kind of middle range power, not applying power, not taking away power, it's actually a 50-50 split on the axles. As you can see, it starts as Stuart starts putting the power in while the car's on the dyno. It then goes up, just pause it there. You can see that the front axle's taking most of the load and it's taking off load from the rear axle. Obviously the Haldex terrain response system, I believe these will run in road mode. I did ask Stuart and he did say yeah, he's running it in road mode. I thought he'd run it in sand mode because I believe sand mode gives it a 50-50 split. Obviously if anyone out there has a dyno and wants to work with Alana and I on a little project, I'd love to get our Freelander 2 on the dyno and go through the different settings with this sort of graph up on screen, and then just see how the car reacts, and also like from starting it up, a gentle accelerator way, and see if it starts off in 4-wheel drive 50-50 split and then drops out at some point, like put cruise control on, see if it's above 10 mile an hour thing, if it's a time thing, how it works. I'd love to get the car on a dyno and run a series of tests through the modes and stuff out. Obviously you can't turn the steering wheel left and right, that's the only downside to it being on a dyno, but I believe this is about the only way that we can get a scientific answer from all this. But yeah, it's just a test that I'd love to do. I'd be really fascinated in it. If you guys would be fascinated, comment down below. I mean, all your comments will help encourage people to come to us, or just if I go to them, it will just give us more force. So yeah, comment down below, like the video, all that jazz. But yeah, going back to this, you can see that it's jumped up quite a lot of power going to the front, and more power going to the front. I believe, like with the Gen 3 Haldex, this might be all that it can do. Like that's all the power that goes to the front, and then obviously the leftover power then goes to the rear axle, because the Gen 3 Haldex can't almost fully disengage the rear axle, as to put it. My terminology is not going to be correct in this video, and I apologize, but it is what it is. So just let this clip play through. Sorry. Now we've got the Muddy Mods car on the dyno. As we can see here, it's on a dyno run. I managed to catch this one on the dyno run. This one's quite fascinating actually, because I kind of panned to the screen, one, to see obviously the graph and the dials and stuff like that, but it was also because it intrigued me, because I was kind of like filming the car and had one eye on the screen while filming. Annoyingly, if I had like multiple cameras and stuff like that, and plus I didn't want to get in Stuart and Martin's way, because they were filming a video as well, and plus they need to see these screens, so I didn't want to be an absolute nuisance trying to do my sort of thing. But the car on the dyno, I believe, is a 2008, although it has got, I believe, the facelifted bodywork, or what, it's got different bodywork on it anyway. 2008, obviously Gen 3 Haldex again, but it's quite fascinating. This one's an auto, and one of the things that caught my attention was the fact of the split between power on this car. The settings could have been changed on the dyno, because I know Stuart said that it can load up the front rollers some more, the rear rollers some more, that sort of thing. So potentially the settings have changed, and that's why there's a difference in behavior for this one. Or maybe it's just something in that car that's deciding to apply the power differently. Like I said, I'd love to do some more tests, so if you own a 4x4 dyno and you don't mind Alana and I coming along to perform some tests, that would be fantastic, and I think it'll make for a quite fascinating video. But as you can see on this graph on this bar chart thing, it's closer to a 50-50 split. What we're talking, probably almost 60-40, 55-40, 65-45, that sort of thing. So yeah, much closer split in drive going to the front and rear axles. So yeah, I'll let that one play through. But yeah, this one did capture my attention, that's for sure. Apologies for all this waffling, but yeah, I love these videos, and a lot of times I film these clips and I don't get to show them. This one is not slowed down, I believe. I think I let this one run through because I got to focus on it. I'll just pause it briefly. What's happening here, car's on the dyno, and there's a kind of process that Stuart goes through. One, he warms up the car, and then when the car's at sufficient temperature, he then has to basically calibrate the dyno, well, the car revs to the dyno, or the dyno revs to the car. So at least then the car and the dyno are reading the same revs. That's on a different screen, so obviously I don't get to see any of this at that point. It's only when Stuart switches onto this graph screen that I get to see all these interesting details. What bits work and what don't, I'm not too sure. Obviously the revs do, and the axle thing does, which is great for us. But at this point he was warming up the car, he was doing something, I have no idea, but yeah, basically the dyno will start when the car's brought to a standstill, then he gets it into fourth gear, floors the throttle, and then the chart starts putting its squiggly lines on and recording data. This one's quite interesting because, hang on a minute, let me check the car. If I don't want to go back too far. Yeah, this one is a facelifted Freelander 2. So I think the plate said 2012 on it. Guaranteed to have the Gen 4 Haldex, not the Gen 3. And you might be able to see that in this graph actually, because the front axle is doing 100% of the work, and I believe the four-wheel drive system's all running fine on this car. I believe it did have a clunk getting into drive and that sort of thing from the gearbox. But yeah, as you can see from that graph, 100% of the power going through the rear wheels, 0% going through the rear. I think I said, yeah, 100% through the front axle, 0% through the rear. So yeah, I'll just play us through because I've got to focus on this because obviously this wasn't the dyno run. He comes off the power, and as it comes off the power, obviously there's no power being delivered to the rollers, so it reads it as a 50-50 split. Obviously there's just no drive at all. Puts his foot down again, and I don't know if you saw that, but it went up to 100%, and then the cars just started to feather the power to the rear wheels under throttle. And as you can see, it's just creeping up, and this is where kind of my theory falls a bit flat at this point. Obviously, like I say, the dyno wasn't set up for this test, so I'm sure if it was set up for the sort of test that I was looking at doing, maybe there'd be different settings involved than ones to do a dyno run. But as you can see here, the rear axle is reading that it's giving far more power than the front, and as far as I'm aware, the maximum these should ever go to is a 50-50 split. I don't believe there's any way the rear axle can give more than 50% of power. To my knowledge, obviously correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure you can't turn these Freelander 2s into a drift car unless some serious work goes into reprogramming things and such like. I don't quite know what's happened here, but for some reason the rollers have sensed far more power is coming from the rear wheels at this point, which little bit odd, and obviously it keeps going down until it almost gets to 100% rear, which got to about 90, and then yeah, obviously come off the throttle and it goes to 50-50 split. So yeah, a bit of a weird one, that one. I do think that you can see in that run alone the difference between potentially a Gen 3 Haldex and a Gen 4 in the fact the Gen 3 can't divert all the power to just the front wheels. An element of it has to go to the rear wheels. So yeah, that was the dyno stuff. I believe we're moving on to another section after this. Electronic traction control and Haldex. Yes, a lot of the times when I edit these videos, I get way too much fascination out of these clips, way too much. I end up noticing things that I probably shouldn't notice, and to the most part, viewers aren't going to care. So let me just play this on. I've kind of forgotten how I've edited this video up, so we'll just take it on the fly. Car coming round, up the hill, gets a bit of wheel spin, makes it round. I think I might have slowed down this clip, either that or I'll skip back to it. Yeah. So what's kind of going on here? This is a nasty, fun bit, but nasty bit of the Billing Lakeside course. Yeah, Lakeside course. What I call the in and outs. It's the last of the in and outs. You kind of like, you can bypass it because there's like tracks across here that if you don't want to do them, you can just trundle across here and continue on your merry way. You don't have to do these sections. But I'll just point out what's going on. We've got a divot around there. We've got a big old lump up here. We've got a camber change just there. So divot, camber change, divot just there. And obviously you've got a 180-degree corner to tackle at the same time, so you're pretty much on full lock, kind of uphill. All the tyres are experiencing all different traction changes because of the divots and such like. So yeah, a lot of fun, but yeah, real tricky bit to get right. Let me just play on this clip a little bit. As you can see here that sounded proper common. We've got the passenger side tyre literally off the deck at this point, and it's quite fascinating because the reason why I've labelled this electronic traction control and Haldex is because they're the two main factors getting involved here. And what do I mean by electronic traction control? Basically, the Freelander 2, if you've seen any of our other videos, you will see that I list a load of features and stuff like that. One of the features is that it can independently brake any of the wheels. A lot of cars, well, some cars, it was literally just all 4 brakes come on all at the same time. They have like a split between them, a 60-40 split, that sort of thing. You get some cars that have 2 braking circuits, so you've got front axle braking circuit, rear axle braking circuit, so the car can balance between the two. Freelander 2 has basically, like I say, my terminology is not going to be correct, but 4 circuits in essence, in the fact of it doesn't matter which brake it needs to brake, it can do each one independently and to its own strength. So what that means is it can hold back a wheel from spinning, and if you've experienced a front wheel drive car in the snow in particular, once you break traction on snow or ice, what I call, you get runaway wheel spin. The wheels start spinning and they'll just almost go into an infinite spin where you come off the throttle, and unless you entirely come to a complete stop, the front wheels, once they've broke traction, they just want to spin up and spin up and spin up. And the other thing is, if you were to put a front wheel drive car in particular onto a muddy surface, probably the same for a rear wheel drive car, one tyre on some boggy mud, one tyre on tarmac, you probably will be stuck because the car will divert most of its power to the easiest to spin up wheel. So if one tire, one wheel is in mud, the other one's on tarmac, it will just send a lot of power to the one in mud, spin that up. It will send a bit of power to the one on tarmac. So for example, you get like 90-80% going to the one in mud, 10-20% onto the one on tarmac, and there's just not quite enough force there to kind of pull your car out the mud, as to say. Probably the same as a rear wheel drive car. So the electronic braking system, electronic traction control, it works in a fantastic way and works super quick in the fact of it monitors the wheel speed on any one of the wheels and stops it from really spinning up out of control. Obviously you want an element of wheel spin. That's the joy of an off-road vehicle, because you want to clear out the tread blocks from mud and everything. So if they're all caked in mud, clear them out, get the mud spat out of the tyres, so it can dig a bit more and keep on digging until it gets to some traction, hopefully. But to stop the wheel from spinning out of control, the brakes will be gently applied just to keep the rotational speed of that wheel under some sort of control. So going back to this clip, as you can see, that wheel's slightly off, well, literally just kissing the ground. So if it didn't have this electronic traction control, it would then send all the power to this wheel and want it to spin up crazily, because there's no real nothing holding it back, and then a lack of power will go through to this one. Play the clip on a bit. As you can see, a bit of wheel spin from that one, but it's not going madly out of control, whereas the other wheels and tyres are all in grip. Play it on some more, and then it's quite fascinating how this wheel starts to spin up just because it's just kissing the surface, but yet again, it's not going crazily out of control. It's there spinning away. The car's kind of recognized that the wheel is spinning, so sending a bit of power, but by putting the brakes on, it then sends more power to the tire, or the wheel, should I say, or the tire is probably actually the correct term, to the one that's got grip. So yeah, in this instance, the tyres there spinning away. Obviously at the same time, Haldex is locking up, so the messages coming from the front of the car getting sent to the back of the car to let the Haldex know, look, lock up as much as you can. So let's give 50% of power to these rear tyres because they have grip, and then the rear tyres can push us while the front tyres are trying to pull. So yeah, as you can see, manages the corner really nicely. Red car, I'm going to call this red car. We'll play this one through. Front wheel up in the air, spinning away. Obviously you don't think there's much to actually glean from this clip as a whole, but yeah, it's just quite interesting. Gets on top of that block, obviously that wheel briefly up in the air, and I find it a bit mind-blowing just how quick information could be sent on what is an older car now. Most of these cars are at least 10 years old, if not older. And in this sort of situation, that in just a few frames, there's a lot of data traveling between sensors on the car and ECUs and decisions being made, that sort of thing. So it's like, while that wheel is spinning, the brake is probably getting just feathered, not by the driver, but by the car itself, just jumping in, the terrain response system jumping in, slowing down that wheel from going too crazily out of speed. And then as this wheel goes up, although it looks like it's spinning quite fast, overall, with the power that's kind of going through this car to get it up the hill, it's not really bouncing off the rev limit or anything like that. Yeah, it's spinning, but while it's spinning, it's clearing out the tread blocks. And then at the same time, the brakes are kind of just holding it. And as you can see there, the wheel rotation speed slowed massively down to the point where, there you go, it's literally almost stopped in the air. So, and that's not just by centrifugal force just running out of power and it just stopping of its own accord. I wouldn't have thought, although there's going to be drag within the whole kind of hub system and stuff like that, I would have thought if a wheel is spinning that fast, it would take a lot longer to gradually slow down. So yeah, without the driver even doing anything, he's probably got his foot firmly on the throttle at this point, or at least feathering the throttle, not touching the brakes. The brakes on that corner alone are coming on just because it's recognised the wheel is spinning, starting to get a bit too fast, and just calming down that wheel spin a bit. And then as it touches down, grips up, and away we go. This is probably the best clip of all. I'll let this one play through. I don't know if you would have seen that, the front wheel in that one. But yeah, we'll go through it in slow motion. Obviously, yet again, that wheel starting to spin up, nothing too crazy, just hovering above the ground as it crests this hill. And probably one of the best definitions to show. You can just see, just at this point back here, I wonder if I can go back a fraction. If you watch this driver's side wheel, it'll just start to get a bit of wheel spin on, but it'll just break traction just there, but it's just holding on. And then there you go, it's up in the air. It's starting to spin around like crazy. I believe this is Steve's car. I think Steve's partner might have been driving it at the time. And just there you go. Wheel completely stopped. It's up in the air and it's stopped turning because the car has braked this wheel all of its own accord. So at least then it knows that the other wheel has got traction on it. And then also at the same time as the other wheel getting traction, it's pulling the car. While all this is going on, the Haldex is locking up more and more and more to the point where it's probably the most locked up it can be. All the clutch plates fully compressed, getting as much power through to these rear tyres so they can continue pushing the car through the bend. And the joyous thing about all this, what you can't forget, is unlike a lock differential that a lot of people slate these Freelander 2s for not having, you can't lock the diffs on them cars, so they're useless for off-road. You must have a lock diff. What's great about it is all this is happening without a lock diff, which means you can do these 180-degree turns. You fully lock up. If you've got a front diff, mid diff, rear diff, you lock all three of them diffs up and you tell me you can do this and a 180-degree turn. The chance are you'll blow your diffs to smithereens. I would have thought. Not that technical. It might be a controversial term. But yeah, having a lock diff sometimes is not all what it's cracked up to be. Yeah, in a lot of scenarios, the Freelander 2s are let down by certain bits and pieces. But in this instance, I think that the train response works absolute ace, because all this can happen while you're driving. You're not got to sit there and change too many settings. And even the settings you can change, you do them on the fly. All electronics, which is both a good thing and bad thing. But as you can see, front wheel touches down, and as soon as it senses got a bit of traction, it will start taking off the brakes and sending more power there. If you don't know this car, where have you been, sort of thing. This is quite a popular car, been in a lot of magazines. This is Michael's car, aka Freelander 2 Lightlander. I always know him as Michael. remember his YouTube name. It's not always straightforward. But yeah, Freelander 2 Lightlander. Go on his channel. He posts a few shorts and a few videos on there. Absolute ace car. I'll play it on a bit so you can see it in a bit more detail. But yeah, this car, he's got a, for those of you that don't know, big old dog cage, heavy dog cage in the back, proper industrial. Probably even got the dogs in the back at this point, more than likely actually. I'm going to get crucified for this, but I think he's got like 5 or 6 dogs. Alana will shout at me, Michael will shout at me. But yeah, he's got a decent amount of dogs, working dogs. He works his dogs for a living. His car, properly customized, front winch, lights, roof rack. He's got an awning, massive awning on the side, which is spectacular when he opens it all out with lights in it, that sort of thing. Waffle boards on the side. His car's fully kitted out, air compressor, you name it, his car's got it. He's removed most, if not all, of the rear bumper to increase his departure angle. I think it's different exhaust on it as well. Yeah, proper cool car. And also, I only included this to watch how smooth this car kind of makes this turn, because I think if the sway bar anti-roll bar is the same thing, he's removed it. So yeah, he's got no sway or anti-roll bar, whichever one's the correct term for the rear of the car. So it's quite fascinating, even though it does pick up the front wheel a little bit. I don't know if it's the weight that helps or if it is the lack of anti-roll bar at the rear. Here comes in, front tyre briefly lifts off the deck. But yeah, and I often say to Michael that sometimes it's boring filming his video because he makes things look so easy and so undramatic of how it should be with a 4x4, that sometimes on video, sometimes you want mud to be flying up and it to seem like it's a bit of a struggle in some circumstances. Michael's got so much knowledge when it comes to off-roading. Obviously car fully kitted out, decent tyres on it, such like, yeah, I can go on and on about that car. It's pretty incredible. As you can see, absolutely nails it. I think this could be the last example for this part. But yeah, car goes up, round. And it's interesting how different cars react. There's a particular part in this one actually, and you probably wouldn't have seen it unless you're very eagle-eyed, because I didn't see it until I was kind of editing this together. But I was focused on the front wheel. Don't worry so much about the front wheel. Watch this back wheel, because you'll see almost the concept of that, of the Haldex locking up, because the front wheel's starting to spin quite fast actually. Compared to some of the other cars, this front wheel actually got a lot of speed up, but I still think the brakes were like feathering it to keep it under control. But yeah, the back wheel actually, there's so much torque going to this back tyre that even though it's under load, it gets wheel spin off of this rock, which it's not as if it's up in the air or anything like that. But ready? Lot of power. You can see more and more power. Then just there, the rear tyre starts to lose a bit of traction and just starts to spin up a little bit, which just goes to show just how much that Haldex has locked up in that situation to shove loads of power to them rear tyres while they're biting in to get it to push through, because it knows it's lacking on the front end. So send as much power as you can to the rear wheels. So yeah, I did find that clip very interesting. Had to kind of forwards and backwards the clip a good few times. Let me just go back a little bit for those that are interested. I'll just play it through. So yeah, spinning, the front wheel spinning, and then just there, the back tyres just started to spin up a bit. Yeah, maybe a bit of loose material under the tyre as well, but overall, just goes to show just how much power is getting diverted to them rear tyres. And then there they are on their merry way. Next section. Let me just turn my page, make sure I've paused that. This is a whole host of different combinations. Anti-lock braking system coming into this one. Roll stability control. For those of you that don't know what that is, it's kind of like your pitch and yaw. Kind of the car has control over that. Dynamic stability control, electronic brake force distribution. That's basically what I described in the previous bit of picking and choosing what brake it wants to apply for. So play through to the first clip. I don't think I slowed this one down, so we'll just go through it. But yeah, we've got Ben in his, as we call him, Greg's Ben, in his Freelander 2. Just coming down, really slippery slope this was. This from Muddy Weekender 2024, Riverside course, really treacherous bit of a slope. Good few cars have been over it, so it made it quite slick. But with the power of the Freelander 2, it's able to get down it. But yeah, we'll just pause it there. What's going on here? Well, there's a lot of different systems. Like I say, there's going to be a pitch and yaw system that's currently kind of probably, I wouldn't say freaking out right now, but it's getting the attention of other ECUs. And what I mean by that, there'll be a lot of different features on the car that will be in the background a bit like, I don't need to intervene right now, so I'm just gonna chill out right now. Just, I'll be here if you need me, sort of thing. The pitch and yaw thing, that'll be there, kind of just chilled. And then in this sort of situation, the car started kind of nose down sort of thing, and it'll start waking up and going, hang on a minute, we're starting to pull some angle here. Do I need to jump in? And if it does, that will be, what I'm getting at basically is a whole host of ECUs. What I find fascinating is they don't trip over each other. They really don't trip over each other. You naturally assume that they would because there's so many contravening decisions. As in for this, for example, you'll see in other clips, but in this one it's not too bad. Ben's got it properly under control, nice and slowly down the hill. The car's not having to do too much work. The brakes, he's got his foot no doubt quite firmly on the brakes, trying to creep it down the hill as much as possible while in control. Obviously the Freelander 2's mission is to keep these wheels, tyres turning, because locked tyres don't provide grip. They will just slide. So that's why they say in the olden days when we didn't have ABS, pump the brake pedal, because a locked tyre will just slide. And also if you're turning, a locked tyre will not turn, it will just keep going straight. So obviously the Freelander 2's prerogative, keep all the tyres turning, especially the front ones. So if the steering is turned, it can head in that direction. So yeah, just coming down the hill, and you just saw a little wheel lift from the rear tyre. Obviously the car's trying its best to keep them tyres turning where possible. Obviously traction massively reduced, so there's only so much the car can do. Once the traction matrix almost have been exceeded, yeah, then the wheels start to slide. At that point it doesn't matter what tools the car has, ultimately it's on the tyres at that point. But yeah, coming down the hill nice and safely down, bit of wheel spin to get up, obviously power distribution, lovely wave there from the kids in the back. These ones are a bit more interesting. Just here, I might have slowed this down actually. Let me just play it through just in case I have. But yeah, obviously rear tyre lifted, and car continues on in my way. This is Aaron's car. Yeah, just slow it down, slowed it down in this clip. Really nice car of Aaron's, really do like this one. Absolute bonkers person. He's one that normally flies through mud runs and hits the mud run many times, and yeah, the car comes out perfectly unscathed, or most part. But what I want to get at in this clip, this is when it gets really fascinating, or it does for me, especially at this point. What's going on here? Well, there's a lot of stuff happening. The car's going to be controlling a lot of different factors. Obviously you've got the ABS pumping away to kind of keep the wheels turning. You don't necessarily feel that under your foot, which is quite fascinating, because normally when ABS kicks in you feel like a drumming under your foot. You'll feel that. I feel like once the train response has been exceeded and it has to apply full ABS, you do get the drumming at that point. But while off-roading, it's very rare to get the drumming under your foot. Most of the time the braking's all taken care of. You've just got your foot planted as pretty much as hard as you want to creep down a hill, and the train response will just work out which brake needs what power. But yeah, you've got the car, slightly turned wheels. These cars have also got steering angle sensors on them, so that basically means that while it can display a picture on your dash to show which way your tyres are pointing, it's also receiving data from that as to kind of where you want to head and how that affects other systems, if you get what I mean. But we've got the rear tyre lifted, and at the height that's getting at, the car will start to kind of let off the brakes. As much as it'd be great to hold the car on the brakes and keep that back wheel up, it'll be very difficult to, because the car's going to start to be in a scenario where obviously it's got to say safety first. Its job ultimately is to keep passengers and drivers safe. So at this point, while the train response was doing its thing, when kind of the car potentially this might be a load of rubbish, by the way, and people will be screaming, that's not true, but yeah, feel free to prove to give me evidence otherwise. But at this point, with how high the rear end is and how low the front end is, I believe that's going to be pitch, and sideways might be yaw. But if the pitch of the car is starting to get into the ground, where the car's going to think, okay, we're potentially heading for a rollover situation here. So it's going to have to ease off the brakes, but obviously it doesn't want to ease off the brakes fully, because if you're going downhill, you're just going to speed downhill completely out of control, which is the last thing the car wants. It kind of wants to bring you down the hill slowly, but it doesn't want to put you in a situation where you end up nosediving and endoing. So this sort of situation, it doesn't matter how hard Aaron's going to be applying the brakes, the chances are it will release some of the brake pressure on the front, across the front axle regardless, just to bring this rear end down, because it will have sensed that the rear end's off the ground. So yeah, it wants to bring this back under a bit of control, really, bring it a bit lower, get the sensors more comfortable, that it's not going to be in a rollover situation, that sort of thing. Obviously, if you go onto a sideways slope enough, it will topple over the car the same way as if you go down a hill steep enough. The car will roll. There's only so much it can do. So yeah, you've got the ABS working away, you've got it distributing force across the axles. Obviously this wheel, it will have sensed that there's not much to do there, so don't worry about that brake at this point. Maybe even the same for the other side, obviously we can't see, but the front in particular, it'd be massively adjusting which side gets what pressure and how much. So yeah, we'll just roll on the clip a bit more, and as you can see, yeah, it might have been Aaron's foot just coming off the brake a little bit, but I very much doubt it. I'm sure he would have been quite firmly on that brake pedal to bring this down the hill as slow as possible. But back end settle back down. At this point, when the tyre starts touching the ground, starts turning, system will be a lot happy. Also, the sensors will know before the tyre's touched what angle it's at. That it's not at an endo angle, it's at a nice kind of levelish angle. A controlled angle, let's say. As you can see, the front tyre there briefly locked up, but then the brake pressure releases a little bit, starts rotating this tyre a bit, because obviously what it doesn't want to do is be fully locked up going down the hill. And as you can see, it keeps locking up, but then every point in this small section, which is probably what, a second or two of real-time footage, that wheel locked, unlocked, locked, unlocked. It's trying its hardest to get not only a bit of traction, but if there's some loose stuff underneath the tyre, try and build it up a bit to create a bit of a bank to help that slow it down, like dig in. But obviously with this sort of slick surface, there's no digging to be done. And then yeah, gets to the bottom, all nicey safely down. This car had a bit of fun getting up this hill because it got stopped right on the crest, so I had to roll down a bit and then get a bit of traction to get back up, hence the slow start. But yeah, I'll let this one play through. I don't know if you saw the dog on the passenger seat. That one did make me laugh when I watched the footage back, because I didn't see the dog at the time. Dog must be having the time of its life. Another instance, this one come down obviously a bit faster. Obviously I don't know how much of this is going to be down to driver input. I don't know what they're doing on the controls. Maybe this person's foot was not even on the controls and just cruised down the hill for all I know. But as you can see, back wheel comes up a lot, but not only does it come up a lot, but it's coming up fast. And I would assume that the car can monitor not only the angle, but how quickly angles are changing. So in this instance, I wouldn't say that the driver's flown down this hill out of their own choice. The chances are they probably crested the hill a bit too much pace because they had to get going on the hill, and just got to that point where they couldn't scrub it off completely before they crested the hill and obviously started coming down the slick side. So yeah, that back end's come up really fast, picks up a lot of angle. So the chances are the car at this point, it don't matter how hard you're going to be on these front brakes, it's going to start releasing a bit of brake pressure from the front brakes to try and bring that back end down, because ultimately 4 tyres on the ground, much grippier than just having 2 tyres on the ground. Just having 2 tyres, half the grip. So try and get all 4 down and try and not keep them locked, keep them turning, try and maximise the potential that the tyres can achieve at this point. But yeah, it's still coming up, even at this point, it's still coming up. It's just started to come down again. And yeah, the car's probably in a big state of, I really want to get these back tyres on the ground as much as possible. Obviously, brings it down, slams into the ground. Looks a lot more dramatic in slow-mo, that's for sure. You do see a lot more detail. And at this point, it'll probably be sending a lot more force back to these front brakes. Now that the tyres have started rotating, it will apply a lot more force to these front brakes, and also apply a decent amount of force to the rear, just to try and hold up the car as much as possible. You can see as the car's coming down, the front wheel kind of skidding around almost in a jerky fashion, just trying to scrub off speed and trying to get a bit of grip back, trying to work out that all these tyres are moving at different speeds, that which is the correct speed to be rotating at. And then as you can see, the front wheels were kind of ABS-ing, the back wheels were kind of not ABS-ing. Whether or not that was using the back end to kind of monitor the correct speed and it was trying to get the fronts to match, not too sure. Without comprehensive equipment and that sort of thing, we'll probably never know. But yeah, lands down, all safe and sound, nailed it. This one, electronic traction control and Haldex. Similar sort of principle to the last sort of clips, but just in a slightly different way. Obviously, instead of coming downhill, we're going uphill. And you think, well, what have the brakes got to do with going uphill? Surely you got your foot floored to the boards, or your foot flat to the board, should I say, and the wheels are spinning. So why are the brakes coming in? Let me play this clip through it a little bit. I might even slow this down in a fraction. But yeah, as you can see, this car's coming up the hill. Very slick surface. This was basically the section, the other side of the hill we were just on. So this is the uphill part. So you can get an idea of why that car ended up coming down the hill at the rate that it did. Because obviously you're trying to get up the hill and trying to rest the speed in a fraction of a moment as you get to the top. It's hard to sometimes judge. As you can see, all four wheels are spinning. But what is actually happening? Well, there's a lot of things happening. Mainly, like I said at the start of this slide, or start of this clip, the fact of you got the electronic brake force distribution. What the car is wanting to do is obviously it doesn't want to arrest too much of your momentum, because momentum is key. But what it does want to do is keep the wheels and keep the tires under a sensible rate. Like I said before, I know it sounds like I'm repeating myself, and I probably am, but just keep them under a bit of control so they don't spin out of control too massively. Haldex at this point, you can tell by the fact that all four wheels, well, we're going to assume four wheels are spinning at this point, that's locked up, sending a lot of grip to the rear. But at the same time, the brakes are going to be pulsing on and off, but not to the point of kind of grabbing massively. They're just going to be there, kind of just gripping the discs a little bit, just constantly in and out, in and out, in and out. Try and get the speed of the wheels under control, because it knows the car isn't going as quick as what the tires are telling it. So yeah, as you can see, you can kind of see like between these two wheels of tires, if you just concentrate on the front and the back, you'll see them kind of spin up, slow down, spin up, slow down. Obviously the driver's going to be probably coming off the throttle a little bit and coming back on, but the chances are they'll be at a fairly kind of same-ish place, probably putting on a bit of throttle to try and G the car up. And the great thing about the train response, it doesn't just work at very low speed. Obviously, I think it works in first and second on Freelander 2s, but it's not limited to kind of like a rev range. It's kind of like throughout the whole of first. So you can floor the throttle. The train response will still do its thing at high revs. It's not just a low revs thing. But yeah, you can see the back tyre there. Let me just go back a bit. If you watch the back tyre here, you'll see that that's trying to grip up. It's spinning up, slowing down. There you go, it's got grip. Oh, it's just starting to lose it again. Spinning up, but it's not going half as quick as the front wheel. It's a lot slower than the front wheel. And you can see the tyres just starting to grip and spin and grip and spin. And it gets it through. And down the other side it goes. So yeah, just by keeping them wheels spinning, it can do its thing. We've got Twitch here. His turn on the thing. Obviously, he got turning steered kind of towards this banking, because obviously the car's gone that kind of towards the other side a bit, so trying to counteract that a little bit. And this is a really smart car, actually. I think it might be a Metropolis, really smart car. Really appreciate when someone takes a smart car around off-roading, because it feels a bit kind of like you're doing something naughty almost. But yeah, slowing this one down, just watch the front and the back wheels as they're kind of gripping and spinning. They're not just kind of going out of control. They're not just spinning out of control. The Haldex is locked up, shoving a load of power to the rear tyres. It's there spinning away, but you can see by the rear tyres, that's gripping up and spinning and gripping, and the front one's going a bit quicker. And as you can see, it's digging. There's mud flying because it's digging down for the traction and it's finding it. And as you can see, the front tyres, it's all just gripped up and away he goes. So yeah, there's a lot of things happening with the car at that point. Similar principle with this. I know it's on water. This is our car, Alana driving, going through water. I don't think did I slow this down? Yeah, I did. Let me go back a bit. Similar sort of principle. You think, well, how can it be? You're in water. Just watch. If I pause it right there, watch the spray coming from the front and rear tyres of the side that we can see. you can kind of see the wheels and tires, but you'll see it that when it goes through water, you can kind of see its system working in the fact of it will spin up the front and then grab the brakes, spin up, then while it's grabbing the brakes of the front, it will spin up the rear and then grab the brakes of the rear, but release the front and spin up the front. So each time an axle, like a wheel or an axle, has got its brakes grabbed, you'll see the back ones do the opposite and kind of spin up. So you'll kind of see water coming from the front tires, and then that will kind of stop, and then from the water coming from the back tires, that will stop, and you can kind of see it kind of sending power to and fro, and also it depends how much grip it's getting underneath the water as well. But yeah, just play this through. You can see just here, front wheels spinning up here, but the back ones aren't. Right, that's stopped. Back ones are now spinning up. Right, it's just spinned up. Right, that's stopped. Front ones are spinning up now. And then it's going to send power to the back wheels as that one. But then they grip, and it's like, right, I've got grip from the front tyres. Send a load to the back. Get the car pulled out of this situation. And away she goes. Another one, you will have seen this car earlier in the clips. This is Steve's car. I think Steve might have been driving at this point, I'm not too sure. But this, what happens here is it looks like it's just a failed attempt at getting up the hill. It's not, from what I believe. I think the car went into limp mode, so he only had about 2,000 revs to play with and probably not much turbo to go with it, hence why the car couldn't make it up the hill. But similar sort of principle again. He comes around the corner, gets to the hill, obviously in limp mode, car kind of dies a bit on him, and you just see the front and the rear tyres deciding kind of, the car's come to a stop, so the front tyres dig in a bit, and then it sends power to the rear, and it's kind of communicating, going, "Have you got grip? No. Okay, and let me give it a try." And sending power to the front, and then the front's like, "Well, I ain't got grip." Okay, and the rear ones go, "Let me try again." And it kind of alternates between the two, and kind of the brakes are grabbing as well to stop the wheels from spinning out of control. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad, because ultimately when it does grab the brakes, you lose momentum. He tries for another attempt, starts getting up there, and then you can just see the rear tyres are spinning, the front ones are grabbed, and it's trying to send power different ways. Haldex is obviously locking up, unlocking, that sort of thing. I don't know what mode any of these are going to be running. I would assume mud and ruts more than likely. Most people run mud and ruts when they're off-roading, so the chances are they'll be in that sort of system. If they're in road mode, fair play. Anti-lock braking system and electronic brake force distribution. Let's roll on to this one. Check my notes. Yeah. This one is, you're going to be like, how on earth did you notice these sort of details? Alana coming up the hill, that's not the point of this clip. Little drift to get up the hill, but perfectly fine. The one bit I want to get at is just as she goes down the hill, what to concentrate on is the brake lights and this tyre in particular, because the idea of this section is, it's another thing that blows my mind, the fact of when the car's doing weird angles, the car's making its own decision about what should happen, and this is a perfect example of how the brake force changes without the driver knowing, or without any input from the driver. You'll see Alana start going downhill, and the chances are she's got a foot on the brake quite heavily, just wanting to creep it down the hill. What's quite amazing is when a tyre goes up in the air, how it reduces brake pressure in that brake, because ultimately it wants that tyre to start turning to get data so it knows where it's at, but also when the tyre comes down, touches the surface, if you've got a brake really firmly applied and the surface is loose underneath, it's going to be a hard job to get that tyre to start turning and unlocked. So in the perfect world, you want no braking happening on that wheel until it touches the surface, and then you can work out how much braking you can apply to keep the tyre turning while applying maximum force of braking without the tyre skidding across the surface. Like I say, a locked tyre is a friend to no one. A tyre turning at a slow rate is the perfect combination, because at least then you get all the grip that the tyre can give you. So yeah, I think the mode is irrelevant at this point, but chances are we're in mud and ruts at this point. And then just at this point, you see that the tyre has just started lifting off the surface. Obviously this one fully on the surface, getting more and more load put into it, and no doubt both the front tyres fully planted into the surface. but this one slightly getting up in the air. And if this was a normal car, the brake would be fully locked on because you're going down the hill, got a foot firmly applied, so the calipers are pushing the pistons out, the pads are hard against the disc, and then that would lead that if it just kisses the surface, it'll just stay locked. But as you can see, brake lights are on, and the tyre starts turning. Well, that caliper should be fully locked, but no, the system's realised that it's either not got any grip or it's up in the air. So therefore, relieve a load of pressure from it because it's not doing anything. And when it touches the ground, deal with it then. So yeah, up in the air. As you can see again, starts turning. I very much doubt Alana would be just feathering the brakes at this point. Should be quite hard on them to keep the car back. As you can see, all the while, the wheel keeps turning because the car wants to know, okay, then I'm not getting any data from you. Why am I not? Is it slippery? Is it up in the air? What's the situation? The car can't see. It hasn't got a camera to see. It has to go off noughts and ones basically and has to get answers that way. You imagine closing your eyes in this situation and trying to work this out. It'd be very confusing. And then as you can see, comes down the other side, perfectly fine. And then just go back, you see the other tyre just hanging around, so I'll play it through. The chances are I'll probably slow down this clip, so we'll end up going through it again. But yeah, you'll see this one just up in the air, but it just keeps turning, so you can show there's not much braking force there. If you watch this one, same thing again, but then Alana was off the brakes at that point. So yeah. The other thing I want to get at is how well this car tracks on the brakes, because ultimately you've got the ABS kicking in, but the thing you've got to bear in mind is, like I said in previous, you've got the steering angle sensor. So when you're wanting to turn the front tyres, it needs to know which way you want to go. There's no point applying the brakes and just sending you straight, because it could just be sending you straight off the edge of the cliff, for example. It kind of wants to know which way you want to go, so it knows not only how to keep the car slow, but also how to let the car turn if you're asking it to turn, so it can release pressure on brakes to try and get a bit of rotation within the car, let's say. So yeah, coming down this, and this was Vinegar Quarry, by the way. This was start of this year, yeah, start of 2024. Vinegar Quarry for the Freelander 2 off-road annual meetup. And Alana tackled this. It doesn't look steep on camera, it really doesn't, but trust me, in the flesh, this was probably one of the biggest hills we've ever done. Marker post there saying one way only, so you know for a fact no one's going to be climbing up this hill, but really fun, exhilarating hill. I didn't go in the car. Yeah, I was happy to film outside for this one. I think Michael might have been in the car, Freelander 2 Lightlander. I think he might have been in the passenger seat with Alana driving. But yeah, another situation, you can see how much the car is pitched down. Yet again, the yaw, rake, whatever you want to call it, sensor in the car will notice that the back end is a lot higher than the front end. So it will be balancing the brakes to avoid rollovers, working the brakes, that if Alana puts any input into the steering, that it can kind of try and respond. If nothing else, try and keep the wheels turning, so if she does turn, they can actually turn the car. A tyre that's skidding along the surface, like I said before, just goes straight to the scene of the crime. Another situation here, brake force distribution, wheel off the deck just there. She is definitely hard on the brakes at this point, because if she wasn't, she'd be flying down this hill at probably 30 miles an hour. But yet this tyre come off the surface, just kissing the surface, still rotating with the brakes hard applied. So it goes to show it's pretty much released the brakes from that wheel in particular, and then as it comes down to the surface, it will strongly reapply the brakes on that corner. Like I say, I pan down at this point, you can see this tyre, although it's not turning, it doesn't take much. As soon as it kisses that surface, that tyre starts turning, so you can tell them brakes are not that hard applied at this point, and then as it gets more pressure on it, the brakes are then hard reapplied. This is one of situations, again, like I say, there's only so much the brakes can do, because ultimately the tyres are the things that break traction first, and it doesn't matter how many sensors you've got in the car or how good them sensors are, the car's still probably going to behave in a similar way nowadays as what these cars did in their prime, because the tyre, once it starts sliding, yeah, it's hard to regain the grip, but it tries its best. So yeah, again, a lot of brake force going through the front axle, probably a decent amount going through this tyre or this wheel, not so much through this one. So it's alternating where it's putting the braking force, working out where the most traction to hold the car back is. And at this point, it's quite amazing how slow that she managed to keep it on this first part, because like I say, it's, I won't say near vertical drop, but it's a steep drop, that's for sure. Car starts skidding a little bit. Like I say, that tyre is just kind of holding in there, trying to do its thing, but obviously quite hard on the other brakes. The car being front end down wouldn't be too fast, because obviously getting data from this rear tyre, so it knows that it's not in a rollover situation, so it can keep the brakes quite applied, a lot of pressure through the front brakes, sorry. And then yeah, it does skid a bit going down the hill, but like I say, it still tracks. One of the things that's quite cool is it still tracks, even though there is ruts here, which obviously keeps the tracking quite straight. They're not big deep ruts at this point, so obviously the car main aim is to keep the speed back, but what you don't want is the brakes so firmly applied on one corner that it starts pulling the car around, because you imagine if it applied the left side brakes hard enough, or the left front corner hard enough in particular, and this one quite hard, the car will just want to pitch to that direction and head off this way, the same way as if it did the other two brakes. If it applied them quite hard, it'll want to disappear this way, and at this point of the hill, you do not want that, because you will end up in a rollover situation. The car will start rotating on you, go sideways, and then start rolling. So yeah, although people look at this think, well, that wasn't as controlled as it could be, the car does a fantastic job of just keeping itself straight and true, and just keeps you going down a straight line, controlled. I'm sure if Alana wanted to put any turning in, she could have. Why she would have, I don't know, but quite incredible, I must admit, just to see the car be able to go down this. You can see from the height up there. Give it some welly and get those wheels spinning. I want to just give a massive shout out to Joel Self, outdoor instructor. From watching him, from both Alana and I, from watching him, his videos, that sort of thing, and also in person, we've learned an awful lot of how to drive Freelander 2. Even though his is auto, or was, not sure if he sold it at this point. Yeah, how he drives his Freelander, that's where we got this whole idea of keeping the revs up and keeping the wheels spinning, because when you see his driving style, he's not particularly tentative, but equally, he's not over the top. He's not doing it showboating, he's not spraying mud for the sake of it. He's got the right balance going on. Perfect example here. Alana starts off almost doing it how not to do it. I jump in, give her a shout, and basically tell her to floor it in first, just get some welly in it. And lo and behold, you'll see the car kind of like, even though the wheels are spinning really fast, if I can slow it down enough, you can see the car sorting itself out, working out which wheel to brake, how much power to send to the rear tyres, etc, etc. So yeah, just play this through. Alana approaches quite gently, and no, keep. Okay, then try and go backwards. Give it a good boot loading first. Let me just go back to explain. You can probably guess what's going on there from the clip. It's pretty self-explanatory. Oh, too far. There. So obviously she goes into this obstacle, perfect amount of revs, perfect amount of power, gets over the obstacle, perfectly fine. Obviously gets this next one, bit of torque, fell off, and then bellies out, as Freelander 2s like to do, obviously on the rock sliders, which then hangs the tyres off the ground a little bit, not a huge amount of grip. Obviously car gets a bit perched there, so Alana tries again, try and pull it out with a bit of steering, puts it in reverse, tries to get it out in reverse, thinking we're getting a bit stuck here. I kind of had a bit of faith that we wasn't too stuck overall. I just knew that it probably just needed a bit of welly, and as you'll see from this next segment, puts it in first, does her favourite thing, gives it loads of revs, gets off that clutch, gets the wheels spinning away so they can sort themselves out. Lo and behold, car doesn't stall at this point and gets itself out of the predicament. Bit of good boot loading first. See, and away we go. Obviously, I'll say that like we didn't stall that. Well, Alana didn't stall at this point. I cut away at this point, but yeah, we got to this point. Torque had disappeared, and the car ended up stalling just there. But at least we were out of the situation we were in. just a bit further around.
You want to go further that way so this back wheel gets away from this road.
And then you'll just see Alana just giving it not too many revs, because that's ultimately a thing here. I'm not saying about giving it, bouncing it off the rev limit or putting it over 3,000 revs, that sort of thing. But yeah, just giving it a healthy amount of revs. If you have to slip the clutch a bit, fine, but try and get off it, because obviously too many revs in the clutch, you will warp your clutch and cause yourself damage for the clutch and the flywheel. But try and get off the clutch, get the wheel spinning, get the torque built, get the turbo spinning, let the systems do their thing. And as you can see just there, just go back a bit. She starts rolling and then gives it gets the throttle down, gets the revs up, gets the front tires spinning away, and it just helps the car pull itself through, rather than being in a situation where the turbo's nowhere and the car hasn't got the torque. The systems are trying to cut in to do their thing, which ultimately will lead to a stalling situation. One with me driving, very rare. Let me just go back. Another situation, I'm really not afraid to get the tyres spinning in these sorts of situations. And yeah, like I said, I've learnt a lot off Joel. So coming up to this hill, I knew I'd need a lot of torque to get up it. Obviously don't want it dying halfway up. And then just get to the top. I kind of knew that it would kind of struggle a little bit at this point, but I knew keep my foot in, keep the power there. As soon as the power disappears, you know you're in a whole world of trouble. But yeah, just allowing the front wheels to get spinning. Oh, sorry, took back too far. Pulls me through, all fine. Another section that I knew was going to be a challenge. Just allowing the wheels to spin up a bit again. Oh, too far. One of the things that I always turn around and say, spinning wheels are no bad thing on a Freelander 2, that's for sure. If the wheels are spinning, the systems can do their thing. Also keep the revs built, keep the torque built, so at least then that can keep delivering power to the wheels. Another instance of me getting the wheels spinning and keeping the turbo built is this next clip. It's like that instance alone, just here, obviously just as cresting this hill, wheels are all over the place. Some have got pressure, obviously these two, and probably that one at the back corner probably hasn't got much pressure on it, whereas this one and that one have got a lot of pressure on them. Get to this hill, wheel start spinning, be easy to chuck in the clutch and kind of go, whoa, no grip there, potentially start again. But I knew just keeping my foot in there, keeping the revs at about 1,500 RPM, so the turbo's working hard, and also the Haldex can do its thing and the brakes can do their thing, working out which wheel needs to be braked and that sort of thing. You can hear the wheel kind of scrub kind of at the rate that it's doing, because it's looking for the grip and trying to pull the car through. Just keep my foot in there, turn the steering wheel a little bit, seeing if that will help the car out, get a bit of grip and get it over the obstacle. But ultimately just keeping the power there and letting the car do its thing and having trust in the car to hopefully get you through, allowing the car to work, basically. But as you can see, sat there, still got the power and still got power, and eventually the systems sort themselves out. Like I say, sometimes you'll almost have to go Mr. Zippy 1, Mr. Zippy 2, because these are older generation cars now. They're not as quick as the newer cars on the market, so the decisions they make, as much as they're fast, they're not instantaneous, so it takes probably a second or two for them to actually get the right answer to the equation they've been given. And yeah, as in this example, it just took them a second or two to work out where the power needs to be, and eventually gets over the obstacle. And again here, front wheel spinning up, back wheel spinning up, but eventually enough power goes to these other two corners to get the car through the challenge. Talking about challenge, a challenge for any 4x4. I touched on this. This is the last sort of, I think, last clip or of this video. So yeah, this one's a good example that previously I did talk about this. Back to this 180 degree turn, sorry. Would this be a challenge to any 4x4? And this is almost like a cat amongst the pigeons kind of segment of the video, that potentially might lead to a healthy debate, let's hope. But yeah, Freelander 2s are given a lot of stick for not being the greatest off-roaders in the world ever, and a lot of people say don't even touch a Freelander 2, unreliable, rubbish at off-roading, etc, etc. Obviously I'm of the opposite opinion. I think for what they are, they're fantastic for off-roading, for a car that you can use to take you to work and back and not look out of place, to go to the shops and back and not look out of place. Obviously you can customize it how you want, how outlandish you want it to be, how normal you want it to be, that sort of thing. Stick a bit of protection on it that don't stand out. Lift kit that doesn't make it look too high off the ground. Obviously, yeah, it does prevent it from doing some of the real heavy obstacles out there, but it depends what you're going off-roading for, I guess. But in this sort of situation, Freelander 2, great middle ground car for having a lot of fun off-road, having a lot of fun on-road, adventures, trips, that sort of thing. But coming back to this, obviously right section there, right section in here. If you had this in another off-roading car, Disco, Defender, or just a car that you could lock the diffs on, obviously it's not going to work for this section, because if you lock the diffs, as far as I'm aware, both wheels rotate at the same speed. So in this sort of scenario, getting up the hill might be fine, but getting around the corner, not so fine, because you want the wheels to be turned in at all different speeds. So Freelander 2 is quite good for that. As I mentioned earlier, it doesn't have lock differentials, as to say it can allow the wheels to turn at all different rates, and while trying to put power where it needs to be using the braking system, not onto physical differentials. It has its pros, has its cons, that sort of thing. Perfect example of this. This person comes round, comes up to this. Obviously we've seen people get past it perfectly fine. Just kind of lacks a bit of momentum, just gets hooked up on this rock here, and the car just struggles to get over it. Makes you wonder, bit more welly, bit more prolonged welly, would it eventually drag itself over? Obviously I do film, but I do like to give people input. They might hate it, I apologise for that, but just letting them know what they're hung up on, just let them know, look, maybe best to go all the way back, start again. So yeah, that's what he does, and obviously gets round it. But this is why I say, would it be a challenge for any 4x4, the fact of 180-degree turn, so you can't really lock the diffs on the car if you had locked diffs, because you need to be turning pretty much on full lock while getting up a hill, that sort of thing, so you'll have to leave your diffs unlocked. So I do think this little corner in particular, doing this little section, changes year on year. So this year it was like this, next year it'll be different again. But yeah, it just makes you wonder if it'll prove difficult for another 4x4. Obviously this is another lap, and he obviously nailed it. Experience is king and all that, but it shows, yeah, I'm just showing you the fact that we all have their moments, get to an obstacle, don't quite approach it right, you have to reset sometimes, try it again, and then obviously second time round, absolute nailed it like a pro, and then round and down. But yeah, would that be a challenge for any 4x4? I personally think it would be, making sure the video is actually paused. But that is the video. Hope you enjoyed this type of video. Hopefully I've not waffled too much. Hopefully it's not too boring. I know a lot of you, this will be a very niche video marketed at a very small amount of people, but if you did like it, it'd be much appreciated if you stick a like on this video, or stick a comment down below, just say you appreciate, or like the video, or do another one, or even don't do another one. That's fine by me. But thank you very much for watching this video. Feel free to like, comment and subscribe, and hopefully both of us will catch you in the next video. Cheers everyone, and goodbye. Sabalat.